Min hated formal parties, but this one was impossible to avoid. The Celestial Nexus Station glittered with lights from 1,000 different worlds. Delegates from dozens of alien species filled the massive hall, their voices creating a strange symphony of clicks, whistles, and words in languages he barely understood. He adjusted his formal uniform and grabbed another glass of water from a passing server. Around him, aliens celebrated the Galactic Coalition's 500th anniversary. 500 years of peace, trade, and cooperation among the stars. Humanity had only been part of this coalition for 15 years, and most of the older species still treated humans like children playing at the adults' table. Min worked as a cultural liaison officer, which was a fancy way of saying he helped humans and aliens understand each other. He had learned one important truth during his 5 years in this job. When things got tense, when diplomatic talks started to break down, sometimes a well-timed joke could save everything. Humor was his weapon, and he wielded it well. "There you are," appeared beside him, wearing a stunning blue dress that matched her confident smile. She was his colleague, his friend, and lately, something more complicated. They had worked together for 3 years, shared countless missions, and somewhere along the way, their professional relationship had started to blur into something else. "Hiding again?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "Not hiding, observing, it's different." Min grinned at her. "Someone has to watch for diplomatic incidents before they happen. Always the responsible one." Took his hand, and he felt several alien eyes turn toward them. "Come on. The ambassador wants us to make an appearance near the main stage." They walked through the crowd together. Min nodded politely to a tall, insect-like delegate from the system. He smiled at a floating, jellyfish-like being from the water worlds. This was his life now, surrounded by wonders that would have seemed impossible just a generation ago. The main stage rose up in the center of the hall, where speeches and presentations took place. A holographic display showed images of the Coalition's history, worlds joining together, old enemies becoming friends. It was propaganda, but beautiful propaganda. Stopped suddenly. She turned to face him, and something in her expression made his stomach tighten with worry. "Min," she said, loud enough that people nearby started to pay attention. "We've been through a lot together." "What are you doing?" he whispered, but she didn't stop. "You're brave, you're smart, and you make me laugh even when the universe seems dark." Her voice carried across the hall now. More heads turned, more alien eyes fixed on them. "I think we could do great things together, not just as colleagues but as partners in every way." Oh no, Min's mind raced. She wasn't really doing this, was she? Not here, not now, not in front of half the diplomatic corps of the entire galaxy. Reached into a pocket and pulled out a small box. She opened it to reveal 2 rings, traditional human symbols that everyone in the coalition had learned to recognize. "Min, will you marry me?" The hall went quiet. Hundreds of beings stopped their conversations. Even the background music seemed to pause. Min felt the weight of all those eyes, all that attention, pressing down on him like a physical force. He knew what this was. Wasn't just proposing because she loved him, though he hoped that was part of it. This was politics. A marriage between 2 prominent human diplomats would send a message. It would show unity, strength, stability. It would help humanity's position in the coalition. But he wasn't ready. He didn't know if he wanted this, not like this, not as a political move in front of an audience. His mind went blank with panic. So he did what he always did when cornered. He made a joke. "Well," Min said, forcing a smile, "I should probably check my calendar first, and maybe consult the stars. Do we have any good astrologers in the crowd? Anyone know if Mercury is in retrograde?" Some of the aliens laughed. A few humans chuckled nervously. The smile stayed fixed on her face, but her eyes hardened just a little. She knew what he was doing. She knew he was deflecting. "I'll take that as a maybe," she said lightly, closing the box but not putting it away. The crowd started to relax, conversations beginning again. Before Min could figure out how to fix this, how to apologize or explain, someone else moved through the crowd toward them. She was unlike anyone Min had ever seen. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, catching and reflecting light in impossible ways. Her eyes looked like windows into deep space, filled with tiny points of light like distant stars. She wore flowing robes that seemed to shift colors as she moved. One of the most mysterious and powerful species in the coalition. The woman stopped directly in front of Min. She was tall, nearly matching his height, and when she looked at him, he felt like she could see straight through to his soul. "Min," she said, and her voice was like music. But what shocked him most was that she spoke in perfect Korean, not the common trade language everyone else used. "My name is Lyra." Hello," he managed, stood beside him, watching this interaction with confusion and growing concern. Lyra leaned closer, near enough that only Min could hear her next words. She whispered directly into his ear, still in Korean, "Say yes to me instead. Your species' survival may depend on it." Min's blood turned cold. Before he could ask what she meant, before he could demand an explanation, alarm bells began to scream throughout the station. The holographic displays flickered and changed. Instead of showing historical celebrations, they now showed a tactical map of the solar system. Red warning symbols appeared near Jupiter, dozens of them, growing larger as unknown ships emerged from what looked like a tear in space itself. An automated voice boomed through the hall in multiple languages. "Alert! Alert! Unknown fleet detected. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill." Panic erupted. Aliens scattered in every direction, some running for exits, others shouting into communication devices. Grabbed Min's arm. "We need to get to the command center." But Lyra didn't move. She stood perfectly still in the chaos, her star-filled eyes locked on Min. "Come with me," she said quietly. "Right now. There's no time to waste." "Who are they?" Min asked, pointing at the red symbols multiplying on the displays. "What's happening?" Lyra's expression was grave. "They're called the Dominion. They've come for humanity. And if you want your people to survive the next 24 hours, you need to listen to everything I'm about to tell you." The station shook as the first shots were fired somewhere far above. The celebration was over. The real test was just beginning. And somehow, Min knew that his life, and maybe the life of his entire species, had just changed forever. Lyra moved through the panicking crowd like water flowing around stones. Min followed her, with close behind. The alien woman led them away from the main hall, down a corridor that seemed to grow quieter with each step, until the sounds of chaos faded to a distant echo. "Where are we going?" demanded. "We should be at our posts." "Your posts won't matter if you don't understand what's happening," Lyra said without looking back. She stopped at a door marked with symbols Min didn't recognize and pressed her hand against it. The door slid open, revealing a small, secure room with walls that seemed to absorb light. Once they were inside, the door sealed behind them. Lyra touched a panel on the wall, and suddenly the room filled with holographic images. Ships, star charts, data streams in languages both human and alien. "The Dominion," Lyra began, gesturing to an image of massive warships, "has been expanding across this part of the galaxy for 200 years. They conquer young species before those species can reach their full potential." "Why?" Min asked, his mind racing. "What do they want?" "Soldiers, resources, territory." Lyra's eyes dimmed slightly. "But mostly they fear what young species might become. They prefer to control rather than compete." Crossed her arms. "The Coalition has defenses, treaties. Why haven't we heard about this threat before?" "Because they are careful. They choose targets on the edge of Coalition space, species that are too young, too weak, too far away for anyone to risk war over." Lyra pulled up an image of Earth, beautiful and blue against the darkness of space. Until now, they've avoided humanity. You were too close to older coalition worlds, too visible. What changed? Min asked, though part of him already feared the answer. You did. Lyra turned to face him directly. Humans changed. In just 15 years, you've made more impact on the coalition than most species do in a century. Your art, your stories, your stubborn refusal to accept limitations. They have been watching, and they've seen something that terrifies them. What could possibly scare a massive military empire? His voice was sharp with disbelief. Human unpredictability. Lyra said the words like they were a weapon. Every other species in the coalition can be calculated, predicted, controlled. But humans, you make decisions that make no logical sense and somehow they work. You fight when you should surrender. You laugh when you should despair. You hope when hope is mathematically impossible. Min thought about the joke he'd made just minutes ago, deflecting's proposal with humor when he should have been serious. Maybe Lyra had a point. So they want to conquer us before we get stronger, said. Fine, we'll fight. We'll get the coalition to help us. The coalition won't help. Lyra's words fell like stones. Half the council is afraid of the other half doesn't think humanity is worth the risk of war. By the time they finish debating, Earth will be occupied. Then why did you bring us here? Min felt anger rising in his chest. What's the point of telling us all this if there's no hope? I didn't say there was no hope. Lyra moved closer to him. I said the coalition won't help, but my people will if you accept my proposal. What proposal? Looked between them, confusion and suspicion mixing on her face. Lyra kept her eyes on Min. In culture, there's an ancient law. When two individuals from different species formally bond, it creates an unbreakable alliance between their peoples. The treaty is absolute. If you're attacked, we're attacked. If you fight, we fight. Understanding crashed over Min like a cold wave. That's what you meant. Say yes to you instead. A political marriage, said slowly, but with the instead of. She trailed off, hurt flashing across her face. It's more than political, Lyra said quietly. The bond is real. It's performed through neural symbiosis. Our minds would connect. We'd share thoughts, emotions, memories. It can never be broken, not by death, not by distance, not by time. That's insane, Min said. You're asking me to link my mind with yours permanently. I don't even know you. You don't have to know me, you have to trust me. Lyra pulled up more data, showing ships, weapons, technology far beyond anything humanity possessed. My people have the strength to face but we need a reason to fight. We need the bond. Why? Stepped forward, her diplomatic training kicking in despite her personal feelings. Why do you need this bond? If you have all this power, why not just help humanity because it's the right thing to do? Lyra was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried centuries of sadness. Because my people are dying, not from war or disease, but from caution. We calculate everything. We analyze every risk. We've become so logical, so careful that we've forgotten how to truly live. Our birth rates have fallen. Our culture has stagnated. We're the most advanced species in the coalition and we're slowly fatting away. She turned back to Min. I've studied humanity for months. I've watched you specifically. The way you use humor in dark moments. The way you take risks that would terrify my people. At that party when proposed, you could have played it safe. Instead, you made a joke, deflecting with the same defiant spirit that makes humans dangerous. Dangerous? Min almost laughed. We're barely holding our own in the coalition. You're dangerous because you hope, because you try, because you refuse to accept defeat. Lyra's eyes brightened again. My brother understood this. His name was Wu. He chose a human name during a cultural exchange program. He spent a year on Earth, living with humans, learning from them. What happened to him? Min asked softly. He died defending a human colony from pirates. He didn't have to fight. The logical choice was to retreat, call for backup, preserve his own life. But he'd learned something from humans. He'd learned that some things are worth dying for. A single tear, glowing like liquid starlight, rolled down Lyra's cheek. The colony survived because of him. 52 human children lived because my brother chose courage over calculation. The room fell silent except for the distant hum of the station systems. Min looked at, seeing the conflict in her eyes. She'd proposed to him out of love, he realized now. Maybe politics played a part, but the hurt on her face was real. He started, but she held up her hand. "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't apologize, I understand the stakes." She took a deep breath. "I proposed because I love you, Min, but I love humanity more. If this bond can save Earth, save billions of people, then you have to do it." "We have 3 hours," Lyra said. "The fleet will reach the station by then. If you accept the bond, the military will mobilize immediately. If you refuse, I'll have to evacuate my people and leave humanity to its fate." Min's mind spun. 3 hours to decide the future of his entire species. 3 hours to commit to a permanent mental connection with an alien woman he just met. 3 hours to choose between personal freedom and humanity's survival. "What happens during this bond?" he asked. "What will I experience?" "Everything," Lyra said simply. "You'll feel what I feel, see my memories, understand my people's history, and I'll experience the same from you. There are no secrets in a bond, no lies, no hiding. We'll know each other completely." "That sounds terrifying," Min admitted. "It is," Lyra agreed. "But it's also beautiful. My people bond rarely because we're afraid of that vulnerability. But those who do bond say it's like discovering a part of yourself you never knew was missing." An alarm chirped from Lyra's wrist device. She glanced at it and her expression darkened. "They have sent a message to the Coalition. They're demanding humanity surrender within 6 hours, or they'll begin bombardment of Earth cities." Gasped, Min felt his heart hammer against his ribs. 2 hours and 57 minutes, Lyra said, looking directly at Min. "That's how long you have to decide. After that, it will be too late." Min looked at his hands, wondering how they could possibly hold the weight of such a choice. Min stood in the council chamber, watching as delegates argued over humanity's fate. Some wanted to negotiate with the others suggested abandoning Earth to save the Coalition from war. None of them offered real help. He'd made his decision an hour ago, but saying the words out loud still felt impossible. "I accept," he said quietly to Lyra, who stood beside him like a silver statue. "I'll do the bond." Lyra's eyes brightened with relief and something else. Fear, maybe. This was a big step for her too. The ceremony must be performed before the ambassador and the Coalition Council. It's the only way to make the treaty official. Within minutes, they stood on the main platform while the council chamber filled with witnesses. Watched from the front row, her face carefully neutral. The ambassador, an ancient being whose skin glowed like moonlight, approached carrying a small device that looked like a crown made of liquid silver. "This is unusual," the ambassador said in a voice that echoed with harmonics. "We have not performed a bonding ceremony with another species in 300 years. Are you certain, Lyra? This cannot be undone." "I'm certain," Lyra said firmly. The ambassador turned to Min. "And you, human, do you understand what you're agreeing to? This bond will tie your mind to hers for the rest of your lives. You'll feel her emotions, share her pain. There will be nowhere to hide, nothing to keep secret." Min thought about Earth, about his parents in Seoul, about the millions of children who would die if he said no. "I understand, I accept." The ambassador placed the crown on Min's head, then did the same to Lyra with a second device. "Then let the bond begin." The world exploded into light and sensation. Min felt himself falling through space, through memories that weren't his own. He saw Lyra as a child, learning logic and mathematics with frightening speed. He felt her grief when her brother died, a pain so deep it had nearly destroyed her. He experienced her loneliness, centuries of careful distance from others, afraid to feel too much. And she was inside his mind too. He felt her presence like sunlight, warm and searching. She saw his childhood running through Market's Inn. She felt his first heartbreak, his joy at being chosen for the diplomatic corps, his fear that he was never quite good enough. She experienced his humor not as deflection but as defiance, a refusal to let the universe break his spirit. Their minds crashed together like waves, mixing and merging until Min couldn't tell where he ended and Lyra began. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like finally being understood completely, for the first time in his life. When the light faded, Min was on his knees, gasping. Lyra knelt beside him, tears streaming down her silver face. But she was smiling, really smiling, with an emotion he could feel echoing through their new connection. Joy, pure, uncalculated joy. "The bond is complete," the ambassador announced. "By ancient law, an attack on humanity is now an attack on the people. We are bound to defend them with all our strength." The council erupted in debate, but Min barely heard it. He could feel Lyra's thoughts brushing against his own. Not words exactly, but intentions, emotions, a constant awareness of her presence beside him. "How do you feel?" she asked aloud, though he knew she could sense the answer through the bond. "Different," he said. "Like I'm more than I was, but also exactly who I've always been." "The fleet will be here in 90 minutes," she said. "Our ships are mobilizing, but this will be a hard fight." The battle, when it came, was chaos made visible. Min stood in the station's command center, watching holographic displays show the combat unfolding. Warships, massive and dark, faced off against vessels that moved with liquid grace. Human ships, smaller and outmatched, darted between the larger craft like angry insects. Through the bond, Min felt every death like a knife to his chest. Their pain, their fear, their final thoughts all echoed through Lyra's connection to her people. He understood now why they avoided war. Feeling these deaths was agony. "We're losing," a human admiral said, his voice tight. "They are too strong, too many." Min looked at the tactical displays, his mind racing. The fought with rigid formations, precise and predictable. The calculated odds, making logical decisions that minimized risk. But humans. "Admiral," Min said suddenly, "that damaged freighter, the one evacuating from Sector 7, how much antimatter is left in its reactor?" The admiral checked. "Enough to destroy itself and anything nearby." "Why?" An idea formed, wild and reckless. Through the bond, he felt Lyra's immediate understanding and her horror at what he was suggesting. "What if we ram it into the flagship?" Min said. "Load it with every reactor core we can find, set it on a collision course." "That's suicide," the admiral said. "The odds of success are 3%, Lyra said quietly, her eyes distant as she calculated. "Though we'll shoot it down long before it reaches the flagship." "But 3% is better than 0, Min argued. "And maybe, if we provide a distraction, create chaos in their formations." Through the bond, he felt Lyra's logical mind recoiling from the plan. But he also felt something else stirring in her. His influence, his human recklessness, bleeding through their connection. "It could work," she admitted. "If we commit everything to the distraction, if we stop calculating and just attack." A voice crackled over the communication system. "This is Lieutenant Sangwoo of the Human Defense Fleet. I volunteer to pilot the freighter." Brother, Min's stomach dropped. Through the bond, he felt Lyra's understanding of what this meant, the weight of asking someone to die. "Sangwoo, no," his voice cut in from another channel. "There has to be another way." "There isn't, sister," Sangwoo said calmly. "And isn't this what we're here for, to protect Earth? I'll make it count." The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of coordinated chaos. Ships, fighting with a new ferocity that shocked their own commanders, threw themselves at the formations. Human vessels, accepting terrible odds, created patterns of attack that made no logical sense but somehow worked. And through it all, Sangwoo's freighter moved steadily toward the enemy flagship, loaded with enough explosive power to crack a moon. They fired everything they had at the freighter. Sangwoo dodged, weaved, kept flying. Min felt Lyra's amazement at the pilot's skill, his absolute refusal to die before completing his mission. "Almost there," Sangwoo's voice said over the comm. "Tell my sister I love her, and tell that bonded couple that this better be worth it." "It will be," Min said, though he had no idea if that was true. The freighter hit the flagship at full speed. The explosion lit up space like a newborn star. When the light cleared, the flagship was a broken wreck, its command center destroyed, its systems failing. The remaining ships hesitated. Without their command structure, their rigid formations fell apart. The coalition forces pressed the advantage. And then they retreated. Damaged, broken, but not destroyed, they pulled back and jumped to faster-than-light speed, vanishing into the dark between stars. The command center erupted in cheers. Humans and aliens alike celebrated the impossible victory, but Min couldn't join them. Through the bond, he felt every who had died in the battle, their last moments playing across his consciousness like a symphony of pain. Tears streamed down his face. Lyra took his hand and he felt her grief matching his own, but also her wonder. She'd never felt grief like this before, so raw and overwhelming. Her people processed death logically, carefully, but Min's human emotions, flooding through the bond, showed her a different way to mourn. "This is what it means," she whispered, "to feel everything, to care so much it hurts." "Is it worth it?" he asked. She squeezed his hand. "Yes." A message came through on the main display. The surviving commander appeared, his face hidden behind a dark helmet. "You have proven yourself worthy prey," the alien said in a voice like grinding metal. "We underestimated human determination. We will not make that mistake again. We will return with 10 times this force. Your defiance has only ensured your complete annihilation." The transmission ended. The cheers in the command center died away as people realized the truth. They'd won the battle, but the war was just beginning. The council chamber was a storm of voices. Some delegates wanted to surrender to the before they returned. Others argued for building defenses and hopping for the best. A few brave souls suggested preparing for war, but nobody had any real solutions. Min sat beside Lyra, their hands clasped together. Through the bond, he could feel her processing millions of calculations, trying to find a logical path forward. But every scenario ended badly. They had numbers, weapons, and time on their side. "There must be something we're missing," Lyra said quietly. "Some factor we haven't considered." Min closed his eyes and let his mind wander through the bond. He'd been connected to Lyra for 3 days now, and he was still discovering new depths to their link. He could sense her thoughts like background music, always present but not intrusive unless he focused on them. And that's when he felt it. A strange resonance in the bond, like a vibration he hadn't noticed before. It pulsed with his heartbeat, with his emotions, with his very human way of thinking. "Lyra," he said slowly, "when I make decisions, when I choose to hope instead of despair, what does it feel like to you through the bond?" She tilted her head, considering. Like probability itself shifts. Your human mind doesn't accept predetermined outcomes. You believe things can change, and through the bond, I almost believe it too. What if that's not just belief? Min opened his eyes. What if humans actually affect probability somehow? Lyra's eyes widened. That would explain so much. The impossible victories, the lucky escapes, the way human plans work when they shouldn't. She stood abruptly. "We need to test this." Over the next week, scientists worked with human volunteers, including Min, to study what they were calling the human factor. What they discovered changed everything. Human consciousness operated on quantum principles that seemed to collapse probability waves in their favor. When a human made a truly committed decision, when they acted with complete faith or hope or stubborn determination, reality itself seemed to shift to accommodate them. Not always, not perfectly, but enough to matter. It's like you're cheating at dice. one scientist explained. The dice are still random, but you somehow roll sixes more often than you should. How is that possible? Asked. She'd been working closely with the research team, her diplomatic skills helping bridge the gap between human intuition and logic. We don't know, the scientist admitted, but we think it's connected to human emotional intensity. The stronger the emotion, the stronger the effect. Hope, love, rage, desperation. These aren't just feelings to humans. They're tools that reshape reality at the quantum level. Min thought about Sangwoo, flying that doomed freighter with absolute determination. Had the lieutenant's refusal to fail actually increased his odds of success? Had human stubbornness bent the laws of physics just a little? If this is true, Lyra said, then we can use it. We can train mixed crews, humans and working together. Your quantum effect combined with our technology. It's not enough, Min said. He'd been thinking about this for days, letting ideas percolate through his mind. We can't just defend. Though we'll keep coming with bigger fleets until we break. We need to change the game entirely. What do you mean? Leaned forward. We take the fight to them, Min said. We stop thinking like victims and start thinking like survivors. Humans don't wait for the universe to save them. We save ourselves. The proposal was insane, and half the coalition immediately rejected it. Attack the Dominion. Their entire empire. It would be suicide. But a growing number of people, human and alien alike, started to see the wisdom in it. The expected fear, expected surrender or desperate defense. They wouldn't expect a young species to strike back at their home territory. We'd need volunteers, Lyra said, crews willing to risk everything. They got more than they expected. Humans signed up by the thousands, eager to fight for their world. But surprisingly, young joined too. They'd watched the battle. They'd seen humans fight with passion instead of calculation. They wanted to feel that alive. Training began immediately. Human pilots taught about improvisation, about trusting gut instinct over data. Engineers showed humans how to push their ships beyond safe limits, how to modify weapons in ways they would never anticipate. Min and Lyra became symbols of this new alliance. They gave speeches together, their bond visible in the way they finished each other's thoughts. Young people, both human and alien, looked at them and saw hope. Meanwhile, had found her own path. She'd been appointed ambassador to the, helping to strengthen the cultural bonds between species. And she'd grown close to a scientist named, who studied human psychology with fascination. I was angry at first, told Min one evening over a video call, when you chose Lyra, but I understand now. What you did wasn't about romance, it was about survival. It became about romance too, Min admitted. The bond is, it's impossible to be that close to someone and not love them. I know, smiled, and there was genuine warmth in it. I'm happy for you, and I'm happy for me, is teaching me to see the universe through logical eyes while I teach him about the beauty of emotional chaos. Maybe we're creating something new, Min said. Not human, but something that takes the best of both. The mixed crews trained for 3 months. They formed new tactics, new strategies, new ways of thinking about warfare. They called them the Resonance Corps because human and alien minds resonated together, creating something greater than either alone. Then the intelligence reports came in. They were gathering a massive fleet just as they'd promised, 10 times larger than the first attack. They would arrive in 2 weeks. But there was more information, pulled from captured data files. The Dominion wasn't expanding out of greed or ambition. They were running from something. A threat called the Void Collective was sweeping across the galaxy, consuming everything in its path. The conquered young species to build an army against this existential threat. In their twisted logic, enslaving others was better than letting the void consume them all. Min stood in the command center, staring at the data. Through the bond, he felt Lyra's mind working through the implications. This changes everything, she said. They aren't just enemies, they're desperate survivors. We're all desperate survivors, Min replied. The question is whether we can stop killing each other long enough to face the real threat. Three options, said, appearing on a communication screen. Fight thee and let the void consume us both. Surrender to thee and become their slaves. Or find a way to negotiate with the void itself. You're forgetting the fourth option, Min said, feeling a familiar recklessness rising in his chest. Through the bond, he felt Lyra's recognition and her exasperated affection. What's the fourth option? Asked. Min grinned. Do all three at once, because apparently humans don't believe in choosing just one path. The room went silent. People stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. But through the bond, he felt Lyra's brilliant mind catching fire with the idea, seeing possibilities that logic alone would never reveal. It's impossible, a commander said. We don't have the resources for even one of those options, let alone three. Impossible is just a starting point, Min said. Now let's figure out how to do it anyway. And somehow, impossibly, stubbornly, people started to believe, because that's what humans did best. They looked at the word impossible and said, "Watch me." They captured a commander 3 days before the massive fleet was supposed to arrive. His ship had been scouting ahead, and the Resonance Corps caught him by surprise. Under interrogation, he revealed the full truth. The Void Collective wasn't just a threat. It was the end of everything. An artificial intelligence born from a species that had uploaded their consciousness to escape death. But in becoming digital, they'd lost their purpose. Now they consumed other species, searching for meaning in an existence that had none. They cannot be negotiated with, the commander said, his voice defeated. They cannot be fought. They simply consume and convert everything they touch. Everything can be negotiated with, Min said. You just have to find what they want. They want nothing, the commander replied. That's the problem. Min turned to Lyra. What do you think? Through the bond, he felt her considering the problem from every angle. If the void used to be biological, they might still have some trace of that existence, some memory of what it meant to be alive. Then we remind them, Min said simply. The plan they created was insane by any standard. They would split their forces 3 ways, would lead a diplomatic mission to space, offering an alliance of equals. Sangwoo's younger brother, Minho, would lead a team attempting to communicate with the Void Collective, and the Resonance Corps would prepare to fight both threats if diplomacy failed. The Coalition Council fought them every step of the way. This is madness, one delegate shouted. You'll doom us all. Min stood before the full council with Lyra beside him. He thought about that party months ago when had proposed and he'd deflected with humor. He'd been afraid of commitment, afraid of saying yes to an uncertain future. But he'd learned something since then. Life required saying yes, even when the outcome wasn't guaranteed. I know this is crazy, Min told the council. I know the odds are against us. They calculate a 12% chance of success. 12%, that's terrible odds. Then why do it? Someone asked. Because 12% is better than 0, because doing nothing is a choice too, and it's one that leads to certain extinction. Min felt Lyra's support flowing through their bond, strengthening his words. We're not asking you to believe it will work. We're asking you to believe it's worth trying. He paused, looking around at the hundreds of faces, human and alien. Every species here has its own strengths. They have logic and technology. They have military discipline. Others have different gifts, but humans have something special. We have the stubborn, illogical refusal to give up. We say yes to impossible futures. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what the galaxy needs right now. The vote was close, but it passed. The mission was approved. Left for space with a small diplomatic fleet, she took with her the scientist who'd learned to appreciate human emotional thinking. Their mission was simple but nearly impossible. Convince that humanity and the coalition wanted to help, not conquer. She broadcast her message on all channels. We know you're afraid. We know the void is coming, but slavery isn't strength. Partnership is. Join us. Not as masters or servants, but as equals. They ignored her at first, then attacked. But ship, equipped with shields and piloted by humans who refused to die, kept dodging, kept broadcasting. For 3 days she repeated her message. On the fourth day they stopped shooting. A single word came back: explain. Meanwhile, Minho led his team toward the edge of void territory. He carried with him the sum of human culture: music, art, literature, poetry, stories of love and loss, triumph and tragedy, everything that made humans human. When they encountered the void ships, massive constructs that looked like mathematical nightmares, Minho didn't attack. He broadcast a simple message: we have something you lost, something you might remember. And then he played music, human music, a symphony that spoke of joy and sorrow, hope and despair. He showed them paintings, sculptures, dances. He shared stories that had no logical purpose but moved the heart anyway. The void ships hesitated. For the first time in centuries, they stopped consuming. Something in their vast digital consciousness stirred, a fragment of memory, the ghost of what it felt like to be alive. Back at the Coalition, Min and Lyra coordinated everything. The bond allowed them to work with perfect synchronization. When one got tired, the other drew on reserves of strength. When one doubted, the other provided certainty. They watched the fleet approach, massive and terrible, watched the void ship spread like a dark stain across space, and waited to see if the impossible plan would work. Negotiation bore fruit first. The commander, a warrior named Tal, agreed to a temporary ceasefire. You're either the bravest species we've encountered or the most foolish, he told. But you didn't flinch when we fired on you. That means something in our culture. We will listen. Then came Minho's breakthrough. A portion of the Void Collective, a fragment that still remembered being alive, broke away from the main consciousness. It was small, barely 1/100th of the Void's full power, but it was curious. It wanted to understand these strange biological beings who created art for no logical reason. Music is inefficient, the Void fragment communicated. Art serves no survival purpose, yet you create it anyway. Why? Because it makes us feel alive, Minho replied. Because efficiency isn't everything. Because sometimes the illogical thing is the most human thing. The Void fragment considered this. For the first time in its digital existence, it experienced something like uncertainty, like curiosity, like wonder. The final battle, when it came, wasn't what anyone expected. The fleet arrived, but instead of attacking, they held position. The Void Collective approached, but a portion of it broke away, observing rather than consuming. And the Coalition, led by the Resonance Corps, did something revolutionary. They didn't fight. They invited both groups to witness something. They created a festival in space. Ships from a dozen species performed synchronized flights that looked like dances. Musicians played across communication channels. Artists created light displays using their ship's engines. It was beautiful, chaotic, and completely illogical. Min and Lyra stood together, watching it all unfold. "This is insane," Lyra said, but she was smiling. "That's humanity for you," Min replied. Through the bond, he felt her joy mixing with his own, creating something that neither could have felt alone. The commander watched in confusion. "This is your response to our invasion, a party." "It's a demonstration," explained. "This is what we're fighting for, not territory or resources or conquest. We're fighting for the right to be joyfully, beautifully, illogically alive." The Void fragment processed this. In its vast digital consciousness, something clicked into place, a memory of what its creators had lost when they uploaded themselves. The randomness, the inefficiency, the beauty of being imperfect and mortal and feeling everything intensely. "We made a mistake," the Void fragment communicated. "We sought to escape death by becoming digital, but we didn't escape, we simply stopped living." Negotiations began in earnest then, not all at once, not perfectly, but slowly, carefully, impossibly, three former enemies started talking about coexistence. They agreed to stop their conquest if the coalition would help them defend against the Void. The Void Collective, or at least its curious fragment, agreed to stop consuming if biological species would share their culture, their art, their messy emotional lives. It would take years, maybe generations, to build real peace. There would be setbacks and conflicts and mistakes, but for the first time, there was a path forward that didn't end in extinction. 5 years later, Min stood in a garden watching his daughter play. She looked human at first glance, but her eyes held that same quality as Lyra's, a hybrid created through advanced genetic synthesis. The first human child approached, her own child in her arms, a son who looked mostly but had distinctly human expressions. The children laughed together, inventing games with rules that made no sense to adults. "Remember when I proposed to you?" asked, a teasing smile on her face. "Best joke I ever made," Min replied. "Worst timing," countered. Lyra joined them, slipping her hand into Min's. "Best outcome," she said. They watched the children play along with others. Young, learning to express joy instead of just aggression. Small drones controlled by the void fragment, observing and trying to understand play. Children from dozens of species, creating a future that none of their parents could have imagined. "We didn't save the galaxy by being stronger," Min said quietly. "We saved it by being stubbornly, impossibly hopeful." "And by saying yes," Lyra added. Through their bond he felt her love, her gratitude, her wonder at the beautiful chaos of life. A child threw a ball that accidentally hit the void drone. For a moment, everyone tensed. Then the drone picked up the ball and threw it back, its movements clumsy but earnest. The children laughed and invited the drone to play. Smiled, look at them, creating something new. Not human, not void, just life finding a way. "That's what we do best," Min said. "We find a way." Later that night, as Min put his daughter to bed, she asked him a question. "Papa, will there be more wars?" He could have lied, could have promised perfect peace, but he was human, and humans told the truth even when it was hard. "Maybe," he said. "The universe is big and complicated, but here's what I know. Every time someone says something is impossible, someone else says, 'Watch me.' Every time the universe says no, we figure out how to say yes. And as long as we keep doing that, we'll be okay." "Even when it's scary?" she asked. "Especially when it's scary," he replied. "That's when saying yes matters most." She thought about this, then nodded. "Okay, I'll remember that." As Min left her room, he felt Lyra waiting for him, her thoughts brushing against his through their bond. 5 years together, and he still marveled at this connection. It wasn't always easy, sharing everything with another mind, but it was worth it. They stood together on their balcony, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were exploring new worlds. We're learning to take risks again. We're building instead of conquering. And the void was slowly, carefully, learning what it meant to be alive. "Do you ever regret it?" Lyra asked, "saying yes to me that day?" Min pulled her close, feeling her physical warmth and her mental presence both. "Not for a second. You saved my species, and you saved me." "We saved each other," she corrected. "That's what the bond is, not one saving the other, but both becoming more together than they could be apart." In the sky above, ships passed by, carrying beings from 100 different worlds. The galaxy wasn't perfect. It probably never would be. But it was alive, vibrant, full of possibility. And that, Min thought, was worth every impossible choice, worth every terrifying commitment, worth saying yes to uncertain futures. Because in the end, the greatest human trait wasn't intelligence or strength, or even that quantum probability trick they still didn't fully understand. It was the courage to say yes when the universe expected no, to hope when hope made no logical sense, to keep creating, keep loving, keep trying, even when the odds said to give up. That was the human factor, and it had saved the galaxy.